Hi there, I am Jhala Gupta. You must have read my introduction in the first page of my webinar. This webinar is on treating spinal stenosis and PIVD simultaneously, an evidence-based approach. So starting with the treatment strategies that many researchers has gathered into and I gathered a conclusion for all the physiotherapy professionals that was what is the best treatment plan, that how we can balance between the treatment strategies for the PIVD as well as the treatment strategies for the spinal stenosis simultaneously, because a lot of us face difficulties if we treat both of them simultaneously. So the degeneration of the intervertebral disc, it is actually the major contributing factor for the back neck radicular pain. It is characterized by elevation of the inflammatory cytokines. So the degenerated disc, it secretes the inflammatory cytokines and the tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 1, 7 and 6, and it is said that the disc cells themselves generate them when they are in the process of degeneration in case of PIVD or sometimes in case of spinal stenosis. These cytokines, they promote mixed degradation and the chemokine production and changes in the cell phenotype. The resulting imbalance is between the catabolic and the anabolic responses, leading to degeneration as well as the herniation and radicular pain. The release of chemokines from the degenerating disc promote infiltration and activation of T and B cells, macrophages as well as the mast cells. Due to this, there is the further organization of the inflammatory cascade, and thus there is inflammatory response and activation of the C fibers, which lead to pain sensation. So then the immunocyte migrate into the disc, which is accompanied by the appearance of the microvasculature nerve fibers as well as the nerve fibers which arise from the dorsal root ganglion. And in this inflammatory process, the neurogenic factors, in particular nerve growth factor and the brain derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, is generated by the disc and immune cells, and it induces an expression of pain which is associated with the catin channel in DRG. And the depolarization of these channels, they lead to promotion of the radicular and the discogenic pain that the patient feels most of the time in case of PIVD as well as sometimes in the case of the spinal stenosis. The loss of hydrophilic matrix is also there, which leads to the structural changes and thus the collapsing of the disc spaces. This collapsing of the disc spaces causes the activation of the C fibers because of the compression of the nerves, leading to herniation, sciatica, and possibly sometimes PIVD happens in case of spinal stenosis, which I am talking about, that how we can treat PIVD, whether it is because of spinal stenosis or whether it is not related to spinal stenosis. And intraoral leakage of the nucleus pulposus material into the immune cells through the annulus fibrosus, which trigger the pain generation mechanism. So there are various researchers which has come to a conclusion which are talking actually about the same treatment plan in case of PIVD and spinal stenosis, and I have gathered a conclusion on the basis of many researchers for all of us to treat the patients. Hope it helps us out in treating both the conditions simultaneously. The disc degeneration is actually characterized in 3 stages by the cytokines, and the 3 stages are that there are phenotypic changes and the production of cytokines and chemokines in both the nucleus pulposus and the annulus fibrosus, and thus leading to the degenerative changes and the pain sensation, radicular pain in case of PIVD. Further, there is amplification of the inflammatory response by the inflammatory immunocytes as well as the neovascularization and ingrowth. Thus, there is sensitization of the nerve endings. Whenever there is sensitization of the nerve endings, it will lead to radicular pain in the due to the dorsal root ganglion activation and the channel activity by inflammatory mediators and the neutrophils, which result in pain. So, there's one research which says that now what are the treatment modalities that we can provide, because obviously when the disc is degenerated and when the disc space is reduced, none of the modality can help in a way that whenever we provide a manual treatment or a manipulative treatment, the patient is able to take that treatment and the pain goes away. So every researcher, it says that if you are using traction, it is very beneficial in these cases before approaching towards the manual treatment or the chiropractic treatment. So the traction, it has been supported that the traction diminishes the compressive load on the IV disc, epiphyseal joints, causing flattening of the lumbar lordosis, and thus it stretches the spinal ligaments and widens the IV foramen and epiphyseal joint spaces. Patients were placed in supine position in order to decrease the paravertebral muscle spasm, and the hips and knees were placed in slightly flexion angle. Usually they follow a Fowler's position. Many researchers say that a Fowler's position is best during traction in case of PIVD and spinal stenosis from the traction board. And traction force of this type is especially affected on the posterior structures rather than on the anterior structures. So the elements of the spinal vertebral column of the posterior side are much beneficial if we apply traction in the Fowler's position. And the traction forces combined with the axial distraction create a flexion movement if the axis of rotation is through the vertebral joint. They say that if we apply traction at it is through the axis of vertebral joint, so it will create a flexion movement and will thus decrease the lumbar lordosis, and thus will help in spinal stenosis before you progress towards the manual treatment for treating spinal stenosis and PIVD. There is also widening of the spinal canal area and the neural foramen, and thus there is reduction of the disc material through the stretching of the posterior longitudinal ligament and through the decrease in the intradiscal pressure. Now, one research, it says that in case of spinal stenosis, it can be classified as primary, which is caused by congenital abnormalities or a disorder of the postnatal development, or secondary, which is acquired, which lead to structural changes, degenerative changes. It may be due to infection, it can be due to surgery, or it can be due to trauma. The degenerative lumbar stenosis can involve a central canal, lateral recess, or it can also involve the foramen or combination of any of these. So the central canal stenosis may result from decrease in AP, anterior posterior, and the transverse diameter or combined diameter of the neural foramen, resulting to the loss of disc height with or without bulging of the IV disc. And there is hypertrophy of the ligament flavum. The transforming growth factor is released by endothelial cells, which may stimulate the fibrosis and thus leading to pain and decrease in flexibility. And also they say that because there is decrease in the disc height, so the facet joint hypertrophy, it leads to end plate osteophytes formation and result in the lateral recess stenosis. Whereas in case of the foraminal stenosis, if there's a case of foraminal stenosis, there's a combination of disc space narrowing and overgrowth of structure anterior to the facet joint capsule of the end plate bulging into the foramen, along with lateral bulging of the annulus fibrosus, leading to PIVD. And foraminal stenosis is frequently seen in L5 nerve root because the L5-S1 foramen is one which has the less the foramen root area ratio, so that is narrow. So if there's compression in that area, it will automatically lead to spinal stenosis. The researchers say this. Also, symptom of the, as we all know, the symptom of the spinal stenosis is neurogenic claudication and the nectoral pains, right? So it accompanies the buttock, groin, anterior thigh. It radiates the posterior part of the leg, and it causes fatigue, paresthesia, weakness, and heaviness. And symptoms are basically unilateral, or they can be bilateral, or both. Now, there are various researchers which says that, one of them is Anderson et al. He says that if we provide initial mobilization within 1 to 2 days with a 3-point brace hyperextension thoracolumbar orthosis with pelvic support for 1 month, it will prove beneficial. And the Whiteman et al., he says that in group 2 patients, they have taken 3 groups of patients. If we apply manual therapy and exercise plus stretching, strengthening, and the home exercise, 3 sets 10 times daily basis, plus stretching exercises and supporting the body weight on the treadmill, it will prove beneficial. And the lumbar exercises, the flexion exercises, as well as walking on the treadmill for 45 minutes daily will be beneficial for the patient in case of spinal stenosis. Also, if the patient is having pain while walking, so we can incorporate the treadmill walking by harness support so that they decompress the spinal nerves, and then they don't feel pain while performing the movement. So if we provide the harness support treadmill walking for the patient, it is best in case of spinal stenosis. And researchers says that it is important that we don't just treat that, okay, so it is spinal stenosis, let's do this treatment and the patient will be fine. No, just focus on the symptoms of spinal stenosis. Patient has difficulty in standing, say for example, in spinal stenosis, and walking. So focus on that. You can incorporate walking in the treatment plan along with the flexion based exercises for treating PIVD. So all of the researchers, they have said that either you are making patient walk on the aquatic walking therapy treadmill, or you are using a harness support treadmill to decompress the spinal nerves, or you are using a simple treadmill walking. Incorporate like thrice a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week, like this, slowly and gradually increasing, and then giving the flexion exercises to the patient, manual therapy, and at home based exercise program including the flexion exercises and slight walking, which is a monitored walking by the patient, and he or she will be telling you the next day that how their symptoms are, and on the basis of their symptoms we physiotherapists should progress. Then there is a researcher, Melvin R, who says that NSAIDs referral to physio when appropriate, and 1 to 3 sessions of physical therapies and standard follow-up, trunk musculature stretching and endurance training. They have also said that if we are doing the trunk musculature strengthening and stretching, it is very helpful in case of the spinal stenosis, plus including the thoracolumbar fascia stretching. Lumbar traction, there was a research which says that 15 minutes mechanical lumbar traction with on and off cycle time of 30 and 10 seconds, participant position in Fowler's position, and with the force of 30 to 40% of the body weight, and home exercise program or the flexion exercise, it proved beneficial to the patient. There is one traction which they have focused on, is the auto traction. In this action, the therapist adjusts the position associated with the least pain to the patient. From that optimal position, the patient is requested to pull maximally for 3 to 6 seconds and rest for 30 to 60 seconds. The goal in this is to increase the motion without excruciating the pain. And the maneuvers entail tilting or rotating of these sections of the table at 5 degrees per second, no more than 45 times. This is given for 5 to 9 day period, 3 sessions per 9 to 10 days. So this has proved beneficial. And the auto traction has also affected the level of activation of muscles of the trunk, which was actually comparable with the Valsalva maneuvers. So this traction actually, it activates the trunk musculature to such an extent in the same way that our Valsalva maneuver, it helps us in activating the trunk musculature. Then one research, it says that if we give the flexion exercise, it will decrease the symptom of spinal stenosis. We all know this, but the patient flexion exercises, we give patient posterior pelvic tilt, quadriceps flexion, single knee to chest exercises, as well as we provide the spinal stenosis by making them walk in the treadmill, though the treadmill walking will increase the pain in case of spinal stenosis. But they have said that if we balance the spinal stenosis treatment protocol of treadmill walking along with the flexion exercise, it won't harm the patient at all. Then, but it is important to know that these exercises should be performed in the gravity eliminated plane, which is very helpful for the patients in case of PIVD and spinal stenosis. The flexibility exercise should be performed for the hip flexors, for the hamstring, strengthening of the gluteus medius, and SLRs, the mini squats should be done in between. Also, to monitor the patient's symptoms, and if required, the painkillers, anti-inflammatory are required for the patient, we can give them in between, right? But these exercises should be done, and we should keep in mind how to balance between the flexion and the extension exercises. One of these study, it also says that there's a study which is Williams theory. He says that flexion based philosophy that theoretically allows an even distribution of compressive load over the IV disc, which lead to decrease in the lumbar lordosis, which forms in a compensatory faction to provide an upright posture, is a key to alleviate the back pain. And there's a Deloitte's classification which says that some patients do not immediately improve with the movement testing and the exercise intervention, so add immobilization traction and the mobilization management as a treatment option. We should keep this in our mind as physios. And he says that the long sitting positions in case of spinal stenosis may also need modification to prevent the posterior pelvic tilting, which might increase and produce the undue stress on the posterior structures of the spinal column. There's a scientist who is McGill. He says that pain should be respected by the therapist. He says that one should not adopt the phenomena of that no pain, no gain. So in case of spinal stenosis, the patient is having pain and he is unable to bear the treatment, or he says that my pain is constant, we should take this into picture. Yes, while performing the exercise in case of spinal stenosis, obviously there will be some discomfort, but there should no theory in our mind while treating the case of PIVD and spinal stenosis that no pain, no gain. Also, the patient must perform the conditioning exercises, aerobic conditioning exercises such as walking, simple walking, and must perform the lumbar spine exercises on daily basis. If the patient is finding that the exercises told by you is heavy for him or her, then they can do the aerobic conditioning exercises for them in between the treatment plan. There's increased pressure on the IV disc. Their structure and function may be metabolically disturbed. As a result, the fluid discharge from the herniated disc diminishes and the loss of disc height is caused. At the same time, as the joint surfaces are joined together, the joint movement or mobility is restrained and the core stability muscles, rectus abdominis, transverse abdominis, internal, external oblique, and the diaphragm and the pelvic floor deteriorate. About 1 to 4 millimeter height is observed in lumbar disc after 30 minutes of steady sitting. So we should always guide the patient as being physios that whenever you are having this problem, so keep changing your position after every 5 minutes so that your disc does not move further posteriorly in this case. The warm-up can be given to the patient, whole body journal stretching exercises, and the main exercises incorporating the posterior pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, hollow end maneuvers, and the core stability exercises are helpful. Plus, we can also incorporate lifting of the hips with 2 legs, then 1 leg, the kinetic control exercises, aerobic conditioning, whole body journal stretching, strengthening, suspending the hip, plus the core stability, lateral pelvic tilt, preventing the lateral pelvic tilts while performing the bridging exercises as well as the core exercises. These has to be done simultaneously, not only the bridging exercises, because alone bridging exercises will worsen the patient. So core stability exercises progress from the basic to intermediate and to advanced level. Along with that, apply the manual treatment, and if you are a chiropractor, you simultaneously can manipulate the joints. Perform the previous stage exercises. All the exercises which are in these stages has to be performed. The previous stages exercises that you are performing and the next treatment plan that you have decided should be performed all together. Like say for example, in the first day I decided to perform the core stability exercises and the treadmill walking. In the next day, the patient complains of pain. I have to do the core stability exercises, treadmill walking, plus the pain treatment. I won't leave the first day treatment of mine for the patient with PIVD and spinal stenosis simultaneously. Then there is a theory that if there is a distraction manipulative therapy, those who are chiropractors also along with physios, it says that the IV disc prevents the IV disc distortion and the tip of annulus fibrosus, which is sensitive to pain, and this reverts the vertebral bulge towards the center of the producing centripetal force. It is also said that in case of chiropractics, if you are applying it, because you are adjusting the joints, so just adjusting the joint doesn't make that the patient will recover. Make sure that patient is doing the muscle stabilization and the core exercises, because if the patient is not doing the muscle stabilization exercises, he or she will next day again come that the adjustments that you have done, you will see that they have again relapsed. So muscle should be strong enough to hold that adjustments. So until and unless patient is slightly started activating the core muscles, then start off with the chiropractics. If you start before, then the chiropractic that you are giving will be of no use, because anyhow muscles are so weak that they are not holding your bone adjustments. Then it is said that the post-surgical cases of spinal stenosis got relieved by 71.6% cases got relieved by all these treatment plans taking into consideration. It is important that the traction, when we apply traction to the spine in case of spinal stenosis and PIVD, traction also elongates and stretches the muscle and the ligaments. So if something is stretching out, right, so that thing is also weakening up. But if you are a normal person with normal structures, that means that if you're stretching also, it will relieve pain. But if you're already having condition of stenosis and PIVD, and if you're applying traction and your muscles are already weak, that is stretching more, in turn it will lead to more of the prolapsed intervertebral disc. Your PIVD will increase, disc slip will increase. So it is recommended that we as physios, when applying a traction, make sure that your patient is at least at the from basic to intermediate level of core strengthening exercises, so that when after traction you are making them do the core strengthening exercises and the home exercise program, their muscles are holding it. Because stretching, and if muscles are not working, the disc will prolapse more. And if your muscles are working and holding the disc by working on the core muscles, then even if you apply traction, that will be beneficial. So we as physios should keep all these things in mind. And in case of manipulation, whether you're applying manipulation or whether you're giving any glides to the patient, manual therapy, so they have said that manual therapy you can follow, that will depend upon the pain symptoms. Core strengthening will depend upon the pain symptoms. So regularly monitor the core strengthening and the core muscles of the patient and the symptoms monitoring. If the patient is having pain, the next day he complains of pain, that means that we have to modify the treatment plan according to the pain symptoms of the patient. So if the patient is complaining of pain the next day, then by the extension exercises, then do the flexion exercises the next day. But don't stop the treadmill walking. If you're stopping the treadmill walking, which is actually simple treatment plan, we are actually not providing the extension exercises, we are just providing the treadmill walking along with the flexion exercises. So that should be continued, but additional is to give the pain treatment to the patient also. So regularly monitor the patient with the pain and progress according to the pain symptoms of the patient. So this was all about the approach which was used for PIVD and spinal stenosis simultaneously. Hope it would help us in treating these cases, and stay safe, be happy, stay safe in this lockdown period. Bye bye.